Hello YouTube, please bear with me, this is my first video I've ever done on YouTube. Well, if you're here watching it, you're probably looking at purchasing one of these battery testers, as I did. And foolishly I didn't look at the reviews very hard, and actually there's not a lot of bad reviews out there, and I'm just not sure why, because my experience has been terrible. I'll just show you a few things that you might want to keep an eye out for. This is where I purchased off Alibaba, and I always wondered why they had the same listing, 3 different listings, and one of them is more expensive. And that's, in my view, is where they hide the bad reviews, because that's where my review is. Anyway, just in case you were wondering. So anyway, I purchased off Alibaba after confirming that this was the appropriate product for my needs, and it arrived shortly afterwards, and I started using it, and I was cycling some reasonably large batteries, and it discharged the first battery, and then just about halfway through recharging the first battery, it stopped charging. I then started talking with the supplier to see, or the seller, to see what was going on. And it literally took 2 weeks of troubleshooting, videos, lots of messages, photos, and heaps of my time to finally get to the point where they agreed that the MOS board, which is this board over here, it's part of the components, had burned out and was faulty. And so they said, oh, it's never happened before. And if you look at this, the left-hand one, the shiny one still is for the, it's part of the discharge cycle, and the burnt out one is the charging cycle. And immediately the seller said, oh, you must be using it at full capacity. And there's no way you can set these units at any more than their rated capacity. And even since that first MOS board blew up, and yes, it's not my only blown up MOS board, I've never charged at full charge, which really defeats the purpose, because you want to get them back up to charge as quickly as you can. So the insides of the unit, I'll show you on this particular unit. As you can see, we've got a large fan at the back, controller at the front, power supply, and this is the MOS board in here with a large heat sink on it, and essentially it does a fair bit of work, and unfortunately I think is probably underbuilt. So sorry about my camera work, but you can see the right hand, that one there is burnt, that one there is burnt. This unit doesn't work and is being repaired twice. The power supply blew up, and this unit, hang on a moment, I've disassembled slightly so that we can see it better. This is the MOS board, normally sits in like so, and you can see here the burnt component. Now this particular charger or tester never charged the battery at more than 30 amps. It's rated to 40 amps, or says it is. And when the initial one stopped charging halfway through the first, I did have it going at 40 amps, which is what it says it can do. And immediately the seller said, oh, no, you should never run it at full amount. That's really bad for them. So, you know, anyway, this one only ran at 30. And the discharge seems to be fine. I've run that at 40 amps all the time. But the charging cycle, this particular component is burned out every time, and it does it hot. And so long story short, or short-ish, I purchased one unit. It stopped working halfway through the first battery. They then said, oh, it's not new, no, you've used it, so we're just going to have to provide you with spare part. And finally they sent out a MOS board to me, which I had to put in, which is fine if it's plug and play, but it's not really. You've got to solder parts. And then shortly after putting that in, it was working, and I was on my second or maybe third battery, I can't remember, and the power supply blew up. I sent them photos. If I learn how to edit, I'll put them in. And essentially some of the electronics inside the power supply had just fried. And you know, it's, when you look inside, it's pretty light on. They're not really built, they're a great idea, but they're not built particularly with continuous service in mind, that's for sure. So a new MOS board was supplied. It is actually this MOS board here, and you can see the burns. So then we had the power supply, and so talking and negotiating with the supplier, they said, look, I will offer you one at a discounted price, but I'm not refunding the first one. We've provided parts, and haven't we done enough? So anyway, I still had batteries to do. I'd put a dispute in with Alibaba, and Alibaba came back and said, oh, we can't decide who caused the fault. So I can't see how I could. I'd never even opened the box. You can't set the settings any higher than what they should be. And so there you have it. That's my experience with that. So then my second unit arrived. I'd already actually disposed of my first unit, gave it to a friend who thought he might try to fix it. And he had the cables and everything. So the supplier had wiped their hands of this first unit. I'd given it away, including the cables. I'd purchased another unit at a discounted price, but it was a new unit and it should have come with everything as per the listing. When it did finally arrive, had no cables, no power supply, no test leads, no nothing. So I couldn't test them. I contacted the seller and they said, why did you get rid of the old cables? Well, I said, why did you take them out of the box when they're on the listing? And they said, well, it's not part of that deal. And well, of course it was. And so I went on to, they wouldn't send them unless they wanted to charge me. And so I went on to AliExpress, purchased some fittings. These, I think they're MX20 fittings, perfect. They're exactly the ones that are used. And they're these front fittings here, and they're the ones on the cable. So I also purchased some cheap clips. So believe it or not, this whole packet delivered was $16, I think, from to Australia off AliExpress, and they've worked perfectly. They're really very good little connector for the price. There's some, I'm not sure of the electronic lingo, but they're the burnt out bits at the back that have been replaced. Also, I bought a packet of 10. I've used 3 already, and we have no MOS boards to show for it. Every one of these units is not working. So this board was the original, it's stuffed. This was the replacement, it's stuffed. This whole unit was the $100 unit. I shouldn't really say a price, I suppose, but anyway, it was a reduced price, brand new, turned up without any cables. I had to make my own before I could even test it, so I couldn't see whether it would work or not, despite the fact that the seller's saying they'd never had a problem. And this unit was dead on arrival. Well, when I say dead on arrival, it burnt up when I plugged it in. The same problem, I can't really see it, but the same problem with the burning, and these cables, with the burning, and these cables here were pressed up hard against here, and they melted straight away, and it was just a molten mess. The seller, this seller, has blocked me and doesn't reply to requests for information or even to help me. Even if I pay for a part, they won't even do anything with it. They think I'm just a liar. So anyway, here's my defense. I've got machine after machine. I've spent about 400 American dollars and have nothing except for a pile of crap to show for it. Other people have said they've had good experiences. I think the product can work, just don't expect it to work for long. Anyway, I hope your experience is better than mine. Thank you. Bye.